Anyway, so hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another round of mine. This should be the. It is fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it is fifth. Okay, so two more. Okay, so that's another reason why I should move forward a little bit quickly. 5 minutes of typing exercise, 30 minutes of developing application. Go. I need to shift the equal sign somewhere else. Oh, come on. Four is nice. Four. Hold on, did I save the last 5? 536 234. Yes, okay, good. And this is 436. Here we go. To conclude our typing session, and we are doing this. Yeah, so here will be an ingredient, and here will be ID, which will be the key. All right, and then we'll here the data table, data, which will have a ID, I guess. ID ingredient ID and key value. Yeah. Now those will be those two tables. This will be the Java side. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Cool. I wouldn't wonder if there will be something for actually like the database UML. Oh, there we go. Yeah. It's here. Next time. Okay. So I guess we will do that. I don't know how. So let's figure it out. And let's see. Also in the online collaboration, I will have the diagrams. Diagrams.net. That is in the software tools, I think. There we go. I just commit and push. Okay. Have that. This I will, I don't know, put here. mapping business model classes to database tables. Oh, it's ORM. Define model classes, persistence XML file. How old is this? 10 years. Let's see how he did.
For our student controller. So let's start the application. There we go. If I open up my web browser, and right here, remember before we had localhost 8080. So if I try and hit this endpoint, this should not work. But now we've changed it to /API /v1 and then /student. Enter and check this out. You see that we have the API working, but now things are much more organized. Next, let's go ahead and create a class that will serve as the business logic for managing students. Right, so we have our API layer right here. Now the API layer should talk to the service layer to get some data, and the service layer should also talk to the data access layer to get the data so that it does a round trip like this, right? From the client, API, service, data, and then all the way back. So now let's move this, so this method here, to the service layer. So service layer is mainly responsible for business logic. So here, open up the project tab, and then here we're going to create a new class, and then call it student, and then service. There we go. And what we're going to do is, so here, we're going to take this method. So let's take this method, and then put it inside of the service, so just like that. And now we can go back to controller, and here, so this will no longer be like that, and instead we have to use the method inside of our student service. So here, let's have a reference, so private, and then final, student, and then service, student service, just like that. And let's add it to the constructor. So let me put this full screen, there we go. And now I can say return, and then student service dot get students. So this now is a much better approach, and we are using the n-tier design pattern. So if I go back to project, I'll actually open a project and then student service, you can see that now it's being used. But ideally, so this currently is a static list. We also want this to come from a database, but we're going to worry about that in a second. Next, let me go ahead and teach you about some annotations and dependency injection within Spring and Spring Boot. Alright, so far we have 3 classes, and within the student controller in here, so let me just put this like this, you can see that we are having a reference to student service. And then here we pass it inside of the controller. Now this is not going to work because we don't have an instance of student service. Now the way that this would work is if I was to say equals to new and then student service, just like that, and now this will work, right? But when writing code, we should avoid stuff like this and use dependency injection as much as possible. So how do we tell that this student service should be injected into this constructor right here, or anything that we pass into this constructor should be injected? Well, we have this annotation called add, and then auto, and then wired. Now we are saying that this student service should be auto wired for us. So this will be magically instantiated for us, and then injected into this constructor, and then all of this will work. But now we have to also tell that this student service is a class that has to be instantiated, i.e. it has to be a Spring Bean. So to tell that this is a bean, we can use this class, or actually we can use this annotation called add and then component. Now if I go back to student controller, you can see that this red arrow went away, because now it knows where to find this bean right here. So if I go back once more, you see that I'm using add component, but with Spring we have annotations that allows us to be more specific. So here we don't want this to be just a regular component, but we want this to be a service. So add service, add component, they're the exact same thing, but this is more for semantics, right? This is more for readability. Looking at this, you know that this class is meant to be a service class. So the same way that you saw in here, for this controller, we use the add and then rest controller. For the service, we use add and then service. Now let's restart the server and then go back to my web browser. And here I'm going to refresh this, and you can see that it still works. So now we are using dependency injection, and we've actually split things into layers. So we have the API layer talking successfully to the service layer, and the service layer is giving back some data back to the API layer. Next, let's focus on the data access by connecting to a real database and then store the student inside of the database and then get it back out. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, let's move on. Alright, now let's go ahead and connect to a real database. So we've got the API layer, service layer. Now let's focus on this data access layer. For this course, let me go ahead and steal some code from my Spring Data JPA course, and in this course you'll learn everything that you need to know about Spring Data JPA. So we cover what is Spring Data JPA, how to connect to real databases, how to map classes to tables, the entity lifecycle, queries, paging, sorting, one-to-one relationships, one-to-many, many-to-many transactions, and a lot more. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of SRC, and then resources, and then application.properties, and I'm going to grab all of this. So here, again, I'm going to leave this in the description of this video so you can follow along. Now I'm going to go back to IntelliJ, and I'm going to open up the applications.property, or properties, and then paste that in. There we go. So this is the configuration that we need in order to connect to a database. So this is the URL, this is the port, and in here, and then in here, this is the database. So here, let's call it student instead of Amigos code. And then we have the username and password. So because I'm on a Mac and I'm using Postgres app, so this for local development is empty. And then have the JPA create job. So this means that we have a clean state every time we run the application. And then show the SQL. We also want the dialect to be Postgres. And then format the SQL. So you'll see all of this in a second. Now, the easiest way for you to download and install Postgres on the Mac is by installing this application called Postgres app. So it's really straightforward and allows you to connect and experiment with different various versions of Postgres. The default port is, so in here is 5432. If you are on Windows, go ahead and download from enterprisedb.com.
Yeah, it is twice the speed. You can adjust the speed of the YouTube.
And I'll leave the link in the description of this video and download for
I usually
right here, and you can download the latest
like watch the videos at double the speed.
Also, I'm gonna leave a link for videos
Oh,
that I've done in the past
often.
on how to install
Not
the database if you have
every
any
time,
troubles.
but often.
But if you want to learn more about databases, go ahead and check amigoscode.com. And if I go to courses, so in here, Spring Data JPA. So here, this course covers everything you need to know in order to work with databases. So I'm gonna leave a link for this course as well. So once you have Postgres installed, we have to create a database, and that's what we're going to do next. To connect from our application to our database, we have to do the following. So in here, remember that we've changed this to students. This is the database name right here. So I already have a database up and running, and again, if you want to learn how to work with databases, go ahead and check my website. So this is the Spring Data JPA.
Yeah, usually you start by increasing it like just a little bit, and then it's kind of normal. It doesn't bother you at all. I would like to increase it like 3 times or 4 times faster. You cannot do that on YouTube. It also depends on the speaker. If the speaker talks very slowly, then you just speed it up and cut the bullshit.
But I also have a free course just on Postgres, including the advanced databases and database design and implementation, where you will master everything you need to know about databases. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my shell, and I'm going to type PSQL, and if I do /L, you can see that we have a couple of databases in here. But what I want really is, if I press Control-L, is to create a brand new database. So create database, and then call it student, and then semicolon, and there we go. So now you can see that we have a database that we can use. Now if I type \NDU, you can see that I do have 2 roles, so Amigos code and Postgres. So in here, what I'm going to do is say grant, and then all privileges on, and then the database that I've just created, student, and then 2 Amigos code. There we go, semicolon, and this should be database, so on and then database. There we go, enter, and let's also give it to Postgres. So just like that. Now if I clear the screen and then type \and then L, you can see that we have this database right here called student. So if I connect to it, \C, and then student, and then \D, and no relations. So now let's open up IntelliJ, and I'm going to open up the pom.xml. Before, remember, we commented out this dependency, so I'm just going to uncomment, just like that, and then I'm going to reload the project. So click on pom, right click, and then Maven, and then reload project. There we go, and now I can start the application. And there we go. So we actually connected to our database right here. You can see the logs. So we have the carry started and then completed using Postgres right here, and everything is looking good. But we don't have any tables yet in our database, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do next. Alright, so we successfully connected to our database. Now what we want to do is to take this student right here, and use Spring Data JPA to create a table inside of our database that we can then add, delete, and basically perform all of the CRUD operations against our database. So to do that is very straightforward with Spring Boot and Spring Data JPA. So in here, so this dependency right here that we've just commented gives us this ability. And if you want to learn about Spring Data JPA, go ahead and check my course on Spring Data JPA where I teach all of this. So now let me go back in here and open up student class. And to map this student to our database, simply type at and then entity right here, and then say at and then table. So this one is for Hibernate and this one is for the table in our database. And we also need to say at and then ID. And then here we're going to generate a sequence. So sequence and then generator. And here I'm going to say name equals to and then student and then sequence. And you'll see this in a second. We also need to have the sequence name, which will be the same, and also the allocation size. So allocation size, this will be 1, and then here this will be sequence and then name, just like that. And now that we have a sequence generator, in here I'm also going to now say add and then generated value, and then the default or the recommended for Postgres is a sequence. So I'm going to say strategy equals to and then sequence. Here we go. And the generator is the sequence that we've just created, student underscore and then sequence. And there you have it. So literally this is everything that we have to do. So now that we've mapped this student class to a table in our database, next let's go ahead and start the application and see what is happening under the hood. Right, let's go ahead and test these changes that we've done using Spring Data JPA, using these annotations at entity, at table, and then the ID with a sequence as well. So let's go ahead now and restart the application. And right here, let's do this a little bit bigger. So you can see that we have some logging going on, and there we go. So have a look. So in here, we have some logging, and we have create sequence student starting at 1, increment 1. So basically, this sequence is this one, so sequence generator, and allocation size right here. So increment of 1, so that's what it means. And then we have a create table statement in here. Have a look, create table, and then student, and then all of these fields, and then the primary key is ID. So this ID right here. And you can see that this was super easy, right? We've just added some annotations, and now we have a table in our database. So if I collapse this, and in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect from IntelliJ to my database. So new data source. So I just press here, database, and new data source, and then PostgreSQL, and localhost, fine, database. This will be student.
Okay, so here we will be. What did he do?
Test the connection. And base.
He did also long. Just set entity. Oh, yeah, because I have this. Okay, so how was it? Control Shift O.
Using Spring Data JPA, using these annotated database. Next, let's go ahead in the sequence tab. And then here we're going to generate a sequence, so database. At, and then table.
Java X persistence. Okay. So here, Hibernate. Okay.
So this one is for Hibernate, and this one is for generate a sequence. So, and we'll see this in a second.
I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, as you probably can see. We'll finish this. Why is ID red? There's something on the... See that? It's probably something healthy, I'm sure. Well. So, applies to missing total required.
And we also need to have the sequence name, which will be the same, and also the allocation size. So allocation size, this will be 1.
Oh. Import, we want this guy, okay. Now it's good. Should have primary key. Import. Where this comes from.
1, and here, and we're going to the table in our sequence, and also need to say at and an ID, and then here we're going to the table in our database, and we also need to say at and then ID.
Java X persistence, okay. Okay, now we have a problem. Okay, so this will not solve the problem for us.
And then here we're going to generate a sequence. So sequence and then generator, and here I'm going to say name equals to, and then student and then sequence, and you'll see this in a second. We also need to have the sequence name, which will be the same, and also the allocation size. So allocation size, this will be 1, and then here this will be sequence and then name, just like that. And now that we have a sequence generator in here, I'm also
okay, so, but I don't know what he did here, right? That's the beef which I have with this tutorial.
Default,
I already said it.
Recommended for Postgres is a sequence.
He's doing shit, yeah, sure. He's not explaining what he's doing.
Sequence. There we go. And the generator is the sequence that we've just created. Student underscore and then sequence. And there you have it. So literally this is everything that we have to do. So now that we've mapped this student class to a table in our database, next let's go ahead and start the application and see what is happening under the hood. Right, let's go ahead and test these changes that we've done using Spring Data JPA, using these annotations at entity, at table, and then the ID with a sequence as well. So let's go ahead now and restart the application. And right here, let me put this a little bit bigger. So you can see that we have some logging going on, and there we go. So have a look. So in here, we have some logging, and we have create sequence student starting at 1, increment 1. So basically this sequence is this one, so sequence generator. an allocation size right here. So increment at 1, so that's what it means. And then we have a create table statement in here. Have a look, create table, and then student, and then all of these fields, and then the primary key is ID, so this ID right here. And you can see that this was super easy, right? We've just added some annotations, and now we have a table in our database. So if I collapse this, and in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect from IntelliJ to my database. So new data source, so I've just pressed here database, and then new data source, and then PostgreSQL, and localhost, define database. This will be student. Test the connection. You can see that it worked. Apply. OK. And now we have one database. Inside we have the public schema, and inside we have the table right here, student. And you can see the columns, and then we have the sequence.
Okay, so we'll have a look at this arrow. Okay, so I don't know what's going on here. So just feed the Google with it. That field is not meant to be persisted. Supposed to persist it as a JSON. Interesting, and this concludes this this round. Round number 5 is done.